Hey guys, this is Merlini. I am going to give you a review for the ASUS ROG Republic of Gamers G20 desktop. So I recently engaged in a product sponsorship with ASUS and they sent me some goodies. Here's my happy self with the desktop, a monitor, and some other nice stuff that they sent me along. So the desktop looks like this. It is pretty small, but you can't actually tell that from the picture because there is nothing relative to it. These things in front you can these LEDs in front you can customize to whatever pretty much color you can imagine. It is shaped like a rectangular prism, as you would hopefully expect a computer to be, and it is slightly tapered off at the top, which may or may not matter to you. Kind of futuristic looking. Some people really like their LEDs, but overall it looks pretty sweet. So on to the next part, the ASUS G20AJ. Going to the brand. Brand matters a lot to some people. It doesn't particularly matter that much to me, but I will go into it anyways. Computer hardware and electronics company headquartered in Taiwan. I know that my dad in particular really likes stuff from the other side of the world. He really likes Chinese, Taiwanese, Japanese electronics and hardware. Some people really like imported cars. Some people are really all about their American products, but this is where ASUS is located. It's what they make. They produce desktops, laptops, tablets, LED and LCD panels. BTS is actually using ASUS LCD panels for the Summit 2, and tons of other electronics. So I actually heard about ASUS first pretty long time ago. My brother bought a laptop from there. I recently purchased a Nexus tablet too, and all the reviews for the products have been pretty good. Haven't heard of anything super negative regarding their products, and I know quite a few people that use them. So if you don't know about ASUS, you probably live in a cave somewhere. Man cave. So specs. Processor, Intel i7 4790 at 3.6 gigahertz. I didn't try to overclock it. I don't know if it's hard. Probably not. But that is what it's at. Stock. Memory, DDR3 1600 8 gigs. Graphics card, NVIDIA GeForce GTX 760. SSD 150 gigs. HDD 800 gigs. Size 12.5 liters. Liters to me are, I only know what 1 liter is because, anyways, liters, what other half of the world uses, everyone else but the US. 100 by 350 by 350 millimeters. Pretty tiny for the American people, around 4 inches in depth, and the panel case is about a foot by a foot. So it's pretty small. I would say like maybe 50 to 70% of what a normal desktop size is, depending on whether you have those like massive desktops that can fit like 10 hard drives or in like 3 graphics cards. If you have that, it's probably like 40% of the size, but it's pretty darn small, which is somewhat convenient. What other things? i7 new gen, pretty good stuff. Memory 8 gigs. It's enough for me because I don't keep 1,000 tabs open like some of my friends. But if you do keep 1,000 tabs open, just upgrade to 16. No big deal. And the 760, pretty high end, 150 gigabytes for SSD, about standard. 800 gigs for HDD, sufficient for most users. If you download a ton of stuff, then you might want a bigger. You can upgrade if you like. I think it comes up to 3 terabytes. So the price. So I decided to hit the important parts first, specs and price. Amazon has my specific model at $1,168, i7 4790, GTX 760, and 8 gigs of RAM. Just for reference, the 4790 chip will cost you around $380, almost $400. GTX 760 graphics card will cost you around $260. So those two pieces alone, $640 on the top of that, motherboard and all this other good stuff that if you wanted to build your computer alone or with building it yourself with all the parts, I'm trying to give you a ballpark of what you can expect the small premium on a pre-built one is. Other options are available. You can upgrade to 16 gigs. You can upgrade to the super sweet GTX 780 for balling out. If you really want a huge SSD, some people want 500 gigs plus, but I think it goes up to 256, which should be more than sufficient for your OS plus necessary programs, and 3 terabytes of HDD if you need to store a lot of stuff. So that is what you can upgrade into. So the product features. It is small and quiet. Is an SFF desktop, small form factor, so it's tiny, it's cool. Innovative heating and ventilation design lets the system run cooler with less fan noise. Chances are, if you're purchasing a desktop, you probably don't need it to be super small. But if you live in New York or somewhere else that's really tiny, or you just like something that looks small and sleek in your room, that is a nice pro. The thing that's more important to me personally is that it's quiet. I pretty much run my computer 24/7, so sometimes when I want to sleep, my fan's like really, really loud. That actually is an issue. You know, sometimes fan will be a little bit louder if you're doing something super intensive, but it is, for the most part, very, very quiet. So what are the downsides of it being small and quiet? Usually you have to sacrifice, you know, size and noise for something that's less powerful. For example, if you want to buy a laptop, you're going to have to sometimes go with a non-dedicated graphics card and you get less cool stuff. But for this one, none of those are actually sacrificed. You have a very high-end chipset with a very high-end graphics card, which is awesome. So the downside that you might expect is not there. The actual downsides are you'd have to pay a small price because something that's smaller and quieter and performs just as well as something that's bigger and louder is going to be more expensive. So that is a small downside. What else is a downside? It has 2 power sources for the desktop. I think one is like for the dedicated graphics card, but that's not that big of a deal. You should be plugging your desktop into a surge protector anyways, so I don't really view that as a big downside, although other places reviewed it said that it seemed like a deal breaker, which I think is ridiculous. Anyways, energy efficient. It has a 2-stage eco energy mode. Power consumption is touted as 1/4 the consumption of a normal desktop. I run my computer 24/7. I'm not the greenest person, so if you are, that is a good selling point to you. Downsides of that, it has like this, you know, they built it specifically so that, you know, energy and heat from this area goes through this area of the case, and something from this goes through this area of the case. So the downside is that it's a little bit difficult to take apart. So if you wanted to upgrade all the things like the RAM to 16 yourself, or replace a graphics card yourself, or replace whatever yourself, it is going to take some time to do on your own. So this isn't that big of a deal because with a computer with these kind of specs, you shouldn't be replacing it for quite a while. I would say, you know, maybe over like 2 or 3 years, a super high-end user might need to replace their PC, or a high-end user, super high-end user, a little bit less often, but that is a downside. I guess another thing that might be a downside is if you can't add more storage, then you might have to go towards an external hard drive, which would kind of get away from, you know, it being small and nice and stuff. But you can already get 3 terabytes on that, or you can just run a server at home. I don't know, whatever your needs are. You should keep those in mind, or you can just plan ahead and buy whatever you need at the start and upgrade to the nice graphics card with the nice RAM with the nice storage so that you won't have to do it. So plan ahead. Input output ports, you might think that this might be an issue because it is a little bit smaller, but pretty much has everything that you need. Has 4x USB 3.0 ports, the new school stuff that isn't used by too many things, but it is useful if you do have some stuff like USB 3.0 flash drives. It actually does make a significant difference in read and write speed if you're in college or something like that, and you know, have something that you need to read and write a lot. It has plenty of USB 2.0 ports too. I think I only use like 6, and I use a lot of them. So I highly doubt you're going to be using them all. So don't think of that as an issue. It has a display port. It's kind of like the new age, you know, VGI, then DVI, then display port. The ASUS Swift monitor that they sent me uses a display port. So it has that if you by chance need it. It has 2 power jacks. Again, it's not that big of a deal. Has a couple HDMI ports if you so need those, and on the front side it has USB 3.0, which is pretty nice, and an earphone jack and microphone jack. This is a particular use if you're a gamer and sometimes your headset breaks. I know when I first used mine broke like every 2 months, and sometimes you just have them out in the front because the cords aren't long enough or whatever. So you get away with all that inconvenience with ports in the front, and of course your mouse and keyboard you can switch out very easily if you're into that kind of stuff. With front access, I myself plug in like my headset into the front as well as my power charger from my phone, so that makes it very, very convenient. Performance, also what people think is important, and I think is very, very important. It is excellent for gaming, and I ran most of the stress test programs Pro IM95. I also use CPU-Z and HW monitor to check out temperatures wherever necessary, and all those checked out perfectly okay. No crashes with Prime 95. All the temperatures were low and nice and stable, and nothing overheated, which is pretty good. Ran games at 2560 by 1440 max graphics, no issues. I didn't run like the super intense games. I don't even know what those are nowadays, because I pretty much stick to a little bit older games like Dota 2, few years old, Hearthstone. It's a card game. How graphics intensive can it be? Diablo, Path of Exile, a little bit newer with a lot of flashy spells and stuff, but I had no issues with any of those. So, and this was at max everything, keep in mind. I also ran Dota 2, 1920 by 1080 resolution. That's what I stream at, with all graphics set to max. Streaming and locally recording with OBS, so that is very CPU and GPU intensive, and I had no FPS issues like I did with my last setup. So going to my last setup, I had an old self-built desktop. I built it in late 2012, and the chip i5-3570K, I overclocked it to 4.2 gigs, and my thing actually overheated, so I had to buy a heat sink and install it, and the heat sink was very large and bulky and just a big pain in the ass to deal with. I also had 8 gigs of RAM and a pretty decent graphics card at GTX 680, so the stuff that I do is pretty darn intensive as far as hardware specs go, and unfortunately I did have some FPS issues. Frames would drop when I had like super graphics intensive fights in Dota 2, or when I'm just doing a ton of things at once and, you know, playing music. Sometimes the audio would stutter a bit, which kind of sucked. But now I can stream at 45 or 60 FPS if necessary, and yeah, don't have any issues streaming, which is pretty nice, more than I would say your average gamer would need it for. So overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I already listed the cons. I talked about the stuff, the nitty gritty, and overall, thumbs up. Thanks, ASUS. Thanks to everyone to watch my video. Have a good one.